Welcome to another episode of CrossTalk. My name is Kevin Tocci, and I will be your host for the next 29 minutes and 30 seconds. You know this particular program. We use this program as a vehicle to talk about different conversations, most of the time about the things that are going on in the two communities we serve, in Whitman and in Hanson. It could be about upcoming elections, the town meeting, events, just general community issues. Sometimes we'll have off-topic conversations. Recently we had the folks in from the Animal Protection Center of Southeastern Mass to kind of talk about their organization, as they are a regional group. And today's a very, very special conversation. I got kind of this guy's a big deal, so to speak. And the conversation we're going to have is kind of the other side of the coin. We've had conversations in regards to adult recreational marijuana. And as we try to do whenever we are approached or we're asked, we try to make sure that we provide both sides if we are approached to kind of talk about that conversation. Joining me today is none other than Mr. Geoffrey Yalenezian, a gentleman who spends a fair amount of time in the town of Whitman, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Welcome. Now, Geoffrey is also, it would be nice to meet me.
Nice to meet you again.
Geoffrey's here to give the other side of the coin in regards to adult recreational marijuana. Not so much the indulgence, but there's so many other components when it comes to this new industry that is slowly taking shape in the state of Massachusetts. And Geoffrey and I had a conversation not too long ago where he said, a lot of communities are coming out against this, and they're just coming out against it because it's the thing that's been in the past, the thing to do, to bastardize it, but yet they're not seeing this for some of the things that it could provide. So we thought we'd give Geoffrey an opportunity to talk about it. Kind of give me your thoughts on what we've been seeing as of late, a lot of communities who are stepping up to the plate to say, yeah, maybe not so much, we don't want this industry in our communities, but there are a few that are actually saying, yeah, maybe it's worth it.
Well, I liked Mayor Carpenter up in Brockton's quote, I don't want to lay another nurse off. I don't want to lay another teacher off. Right. And that's something to be said for that. I think the really important thing here is the recreational marijuana is going to happen. It's happening. I think it's even hard for people that have been using and buying it off the black market for so long to really grasp and sink their teeth into that this is not really wrong anymore. I think the recreational marijuana consumer doesn't want to be even in the same category as, say, an alcoholic, because in their mind, this is even anywhere near the kind of damage or community impact that as alcohol has done over the many years. So, but I think the important thing is it's happening, and I'm looking forward to the time when we're desensitized from it, and it happens, and we go on with our daily lives, and we don't pay too much attention. I mean, I think a large concern on the other side of this is the candies. I think there needs to be regulations.
The edibles?
Yeah,
the edibles, yep.
I don't care what it looks like.
Right.
If it's a piece of chocolate, a kid sees it, they're going to eat it. I don't think it's going to kill them, but I don't think they should be subjected to that kind of thing either. Beer or alcohol, if a kid gets their hands on it, they try it by accident, they know right away it's yucky. Ugh. The thing about the candies is it tastes like candy, and they'll eat it. And if they eat too much, it's not going to be a good situation. So I think we have to be responsible,
How about I'm going to throw this out there, knowing that we've had, in this studio, we've had many conversations. We're watching and looking as to what's going on in regards to the opioid epidemic. And there's a lot of conversation, and a lot of times the conversation that's been here in Whitman was concerns that we are still trying to get over the hump in tackling the opioid epidemic And let's not forget, it isn't just necessarily pills, because when the pills become too expensive, they turn to other alternatives like heroin or fentanyl.
I think addicts are going to do what's ever in front of them, whether it be cocaine or heroin or pills, Valium, whatever they need to satisfy that animal inside them, that's what they're going to turn to. Again, I talked about alcohol and recreational marijuana consumers not even wanting to be in the same category as alcoholics, or the alcohol, what the alcohol does in terms of, drunken disorderlies and driving under the influences. It's not the same animal, So I don't think that, I think that addicts probably do use marijuana and coke and crack and heroin and Vicodin and Percocet and fentanyl and whatever else is out there. But I don't think generalizing the marijuana consumer and putting them in that category is totally off base. I mean, these people don't even really drink. And you see that in states that have legal recreational, alcohol sales go down. DUIs go down because alcohol sales are going down. Opioid epidemic, less overdoses, I don't know where you find this information, but this is what I've read on the internet. Now, I know you can't believe everything you read on the internet, but I'm pretty sure it's solid statistics.
I was going to say, is you can't believe
Can't believe everything you read, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty sure it's pretty solid statistics, and I don't think the recreational marijuana, I mean, it's generalizing these people, and I think once we become desensitized from this, all of you are going to be really surprised at who actually consumes this product, whether it be in an edible form or vapor or flower. You're going to be really surprised because, like they saw in Colorado, people that haven't used in 20 years are going to say, you know what, it's legal. I'm going to go to Brockton, not Whitman. I'm going to go over to Brockton and spend my money there. And that's the reality of the situation, It's coming, it's here. And they're not going to be buying it in Whitman. We talked last week in the comment about the spillover from Brockton into Whitman. You got a different kind of spillover now, where the sales and all the 75%, supposedly 75% of the population consumes marijuana, black market, gray market at this point. Well, that's 75% of the population in Whitman too, and that money's going to be going over the border to Brockton, because Mayor Carpenter's said it himself. I don't want to lay another teacher off.
Do you see it? Do you see it as?
There's so many jobs, Kevin. And people say, okay, recreational marijuana sales. They're thinking a store in their town. There are licenses for cultivation, to transport it, to process it, to manufacture it. It's not just a little mom and pop shop on South Ave in Whitman or on Main Street. It's an industry. There are the guys, now you have all the people that can grow it. There are the grow shops all over the place. They're filling the strip malls with lively businesses.
Right.
Grow lights and the soil, the fertilizer, they have stuff that...
hydroponics.
But you go in a grow shop and they're saying, don't do that because that's tough, that's very difficult. The other thing is, the regulation. You have all these people growing stuff now. And
6 plants per person.
You don't know what you're getting. Wouldn't the person that is going to buy legal recreational marijuana, don't they want it regulated and controlled and coming from a reliable source as a major grower, so they know what they're getting, they know where it's coming from? The stuff you're buying on the gray market, and I call it gray market now because it's legal in the state, but it's federally illegal, so it's gray now. It's not black market anymore, it's gray market. Similar to like gray market tobacco, you can ship it into the state. It's gray market because nobody's paying the tax on it, but it's legal, so this, I'm interested in seeing how the legislation, how it kind of merges with the tobacco, and especially if the federal government gets involved and the FDA, gets involved, how that all kind of works. Is you got to treat it like a tobacco product or similar to close to. I mean, the primary way to ingest marijuana is by smoking it, you know, and smoking's bad for you. I don't care what it is, whether it's weed or tobacco, you know, inhaling smoke is not good for your lungs. Obviously, we know that now, I guess. We never knew that smoking was bad for us. They never told me inhaling smoke was bad.
But here's the thing, though, and I'm going to digress back to the legality of marijuana. You look back in the 80s, late 70s, early 80s, mid 80s, and there was a war on drugs, and that was any illegal drug, whether it was marijuana, cocaine, heroin, whatever was coming in. We spent trillions of dollars.
So it was still war on drugs, but everybody on Friday and Saturday night is still getting their coke, they're still getting their crack, they're still getting their heroin. So what do we have to show for the war on drugs? Everybody's still, you can grow marijuana. You know?
But you have to think, though, is this somebody who is in law enforcement who has for many years, you know, had to police this? They catch somebody with marijuana. They had to. What did they have to do? They had to not only arrest them, depending on the amount that they had. They would arrest them and do, you know,
because somebody that grew up during the 80s and I'll speak on the 80s and 90s and the 2000s where it was still legal. It's like I said, it's even hard for those people to grasp that this is not a bad thing anymore. I'm not going to get arrested and locked up and thrown away the key.
Right.
And right now, as far as the RMDs go, they're in the economic development phase. So anybody with a medicinal license could apply for a recreational license, and then people in economic development, which is reserved for if you were a family member of somebody that was arrested for the old marijuana policy and it affected your life negatively, you had first crack at a recreational license. So it's pretty interesting stuff to read through. It's Cannabis Control Commission, mass.gov/Cannabis Control Commission, I believe.
Right. They're still working out the policies and procedures.
It's pretty good, though, and it's very similar to an alcohol license. I mean, it's very similar. You know.
So I would ask you this, and again, digressing back to addiction, there are those people, especially those who deal with treatment, who will say that marijuana is a gateway drug, that it leads to harder drugs, and then there are others who are like, no way.
Alcohol's a gateway drug. Tobacco's a gateway drug.
But I'm saying to you is that there's an argument there that marijuana is a gateway drug, that it leads to harder drugs, that you may start with that drug, but then that euphoria, you want to seek something that's a little bit higher and a little bit more dense.
I think people are people, and they have their own, have their own will. You know, you either give your will to God or you take your will back. You know, so I have a little experience in the program, you know, with addiction and everything. I stopped drinking. For me, that's the devil. I mean, alcohol is the worst. And you look at we talk about the economic things that come from marijuana, for instance, the community impact fees. Everybody in Whitman that's selling alcohol, they're not paying any community impact fees. But the marijuana comes in, and what's the community impact really going to be? Higher sale on pizza and Doritos and soda pop, you know? What's the community impact of an alcohol distributor? You know, drunk and disorderly, driving under the influence, you know. I've got experience with that too. My mom was hit head on by a drunk doing 70 miles an hour in a 35. So, you know, I guess they can still have their community impact, but marijuana is going to pay for it.
Right.
You know, and not marijuana sales in Whitman either. Marijuana sales in Brockton are going to pay for Brockton's community impact on their alcohol.
Any concerns though? You talk about your mom being a victim of a drunk driver. I've spoke with law enforcement officers and folks who are in law enforcement who say we have no way to gauge an individual who has is in an altered state of mind from smoking or ingesting marijuana. What do you say? What do you say to that? Where you can't gauge?
75% of the population's been smoking and using marijuana before it was legal. Okay, You're driving by them every day. You never hear of people leaving the road, oh, he was high on marijuana. No, they were drunk. You know, they might have smoked marijuana too, but that's not what led to the crash. You know, you're driving by people under the influence of marijuana every day. It's happening. Sorry, that's the reality of the situation. You know, I don't think it's the same. I know it's not the same animal. You're not going to put somebody that's smoking marijuana and get behind the wheel in even the same grandstand as alcohol. Alcohol people when you get drunk, your eardrum becomes dehydrated and your equilibrium's off. You have no balance. You drive off the road. You'll hit another car. You'll drive through a building because you don't realize that you have to stop.
But you're saying that today's marijuana that is produced today is far stronger. The strength of it is.
I think that the argument that's going to come from a marijuana consumer is it makes him more cautious of what's going on around him.
Cautious or paranoid?
It's paranoid cautious. If you're paranoid, you're a heightened state of cautiousness. Wait, Kevin, what are you doing? Paranoid. No, it's just not the same animal. You know what I mean? People are already driving under the influence of marijuana. They have been for years and years and years, and we're not counting statistics on DUI accidents from marijuana. You know what I mean? It's alcohol.
One of the things that you had brought up to me during one of our recent conversations was we look at communities that when, you know, it's that time of year that you decide what your budget is going to be for the next fiscal year starting July 1st. And there are communities that are trying to decide, do I go for a Prop 2.5 override to be able to make sure that we have enough money in the budget for the next fiscal year, or do we cut essential services like, you know, in the police department, the DPW, the fire department, or do we lay off teachers?
They have a tough job, you know, they really do. We were talking the other night. I don't know if does Whitman know you do Monday Night Talk?
Yeah, they know.
Okay.
They're aware.
We're talking with Kevin, and I said just tongue-in-cheek, you know, because I've been to town meetings for the tobacco industry, and you hear them, how are we going to pay for this? How are we going to pay for that? They want $1 million for this. It's $1 million for that. And then ban or even propose legislation that would ban a new source of revenue. Yeah. And listen, when we talked about the other night too, when there's a school issue or an issue that's going to be, you know, millions of dollars, everybody shows up to town meeting. But you got these bans on the recreational marijuana, its potential could either raise millions of dollars, or cost or lose millions of dollars. You'd think the town officials send a letter out to everybody, hey, we really need you to vote on this because it's millions of dollars. Well, in my town, I live in Freetown now, we didn't really know what was going on. I knew because I was paying attention, but you'd think they would put the signs out like, vote today, you know, send a letter to everybody's house, say, we're deciding whether or not we're going to allow recreational sales, because once the ballot initiative passed, it became legal for sale on July 1st in all of these towns. So what they're doing is they're filing amendments to the law, our bylaw, that would prohibit. And then it's, would you favor a bill that would prohibit the sale? So people go in and they vote, yes, I want legal recreational marijuana, but they're really saying yes to prohibit it. So there's a little like finagling. I don't think that these, you know, my town, I thought was like 247 people showed up to vote on this $1 million bill. Millions of dollars. Over the years, I mean, think about it. In the first year, it could be $1 million.
So whose fault is that? Who's the apathy of the voter in your community? Whose fault is that? Is that the elected officials' fault, or is it the folks who live in your community who aren't getting informed as to?
I think there should be legislation that says if there's a bill that's going to cost or gain, you know, raise or lose a threshold, whether it be, you know, $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, that they send a notice out to the town. you know, to vote. I found out about first the votes, and then
they have town meeting, and then they had
a town
election.
meeting. I didn't make the town meeting. My kids were sick, but I was already decided anyways, which I think a lot of other people, they just didn't know. Freetown was one of the higher percentages in favor of when the ballot initiative went through.
As was Whitman. As was Hanson.
And how many people showed up to vote in Whitman? Do you know?
I have a vague number. I don't have it here in front of me, but there was you had enough for a quorum at 2 town meetings. Town meeting in December, town meeting in March. I think you might have had like more than 800 voters, which is
that's really good.
Well, yeah, but you're talking you have a
but
higher.
In Freetown, it passed by 20 votes. It's 20 votes away.
Right.
You know, so we lost. So we have a stone quarry in Freetown, and every Thursday they do demolition. You know, they blow up the rocks, and it's like an earthquake going off. And we were trying to get it out of town, and they said, no, we get $600,000 a year from having this quarry in town, and they kept it in there. They kept it in Freetown. And then the recreational marijuana comes up, and I'm like, great, this is a way we can get that hole in the ground out of town. I have an old 200-year-old house, and when that bomb goes off, my whole house shakes. And they keep telling us, no, don't worry about it, everything's fine. Every week, boom.
So you're saying to me that your community chose aggregate over pot?
Well, yeah. Well, no, I mean,
well, the reason why
I don't think they thought far enough ahead, or I think that people didn't know.
Right.
I don't think that they knew that this was happening.
Right.
You know, that they were having these quiet town meetings. They weren't really making too much noise. And then no means yes, and yes means no vote, you know, which I guess it has to be that way. I get that, but people need to know. Nobody knew. And then they had it on a Saturday. Everybody's raking their yards. I've, again, found out on Freetown Police's Facebook page. The police were doing more campaigning and driving for the ballot initiative for the legal recreational than anybody in town.
Were they?
By the way, I'm on Freetown's Facebook page as well, and I never saw anything.
But did they mark you? Were they a proponent or were they an opponent?
I don't think they weren't. I don't know.
What was your sense?
I don't know. I think they're for it because they're trying to get the new police station in Freetown, and that's already passing. But all the towns need money. I'm for money, a whole new industry, tons of jobs. That's what I'm for, you know. I think that the stigma attached to it is going to become desensitized at some point, and it's not going to be that big a deal.
Right.
I think we're making it. We need to just let change happen. You know, remember the change? You know, the change propaganda. I think we need to let change happen.
That was under another administration. It's no longer in office. So.
Well, Barack had the summer change, and Deval Patrick had the change. Well, change is happening. It's happening every day. We need to let it happen.
Do you think there's a possibility? I don't think anything is.
People are still going to buy marijuana.
I don't think anything is irreversible, but you have to think that the communities that said, yes, we're going to do this, Brockton is one of them. I believe Plymouth is another one.
They're kicking their heels because...
Hanson has yet to, I know Hingham voted it down recently. I think Marshfield's one of them that has approved it. I'll have to double check that. Hanson will be going to town meeting soon, and they'll decide whether they want to have it or not. They of course, by a slim margin, passed that 2016 statewide ballot.
I don't think you'll see it happen in Hanson.
Why?
I lived there, but I don't, if it didn't happen in Whitman, it's not going to happen in Hanson. See, in part of it's the usual suspects, but I think even if the whole town of Hanson showed up, I think it would still be banned.
Right.
You know, even if you look at the voting turnout for all of these bans, and it's not high numbers.
Well, usually, but you look at when we had the vote for the statewide ballot initiative. What was transpiring that year? A presidential election.
Yeah.
Which means that you get a higher turnout
anyway.
You have a higher yield when it comes to your voter base, meaning more people are involved. When you have stuff like this year, we have the gubernatorial, you have the constitutional offices up at the State House, like Auditor and Attorney General. They're up. You have a lot of races like you got the U.S. Senate race for, you got incumbent Elizabeth Warren, who we should, while we have a couple of moments here, touch upon that. Elizabeth Warren, what she recently said, but you got the Warren race for U.S. Senate. You have the congressional races. You're going to have state rep and state senate race because that happens every 2 years. So that's why you had a large number. I don't know if you'll get that with the gubernatorial race as you would for a presidential. It's probably a lower number, but I want to talk about, give you an opportunity to kind of weigh in, knowing that a U.S. Senator like Elizabeth Warren actually has said recently that maybe the federal government needs to take another look at
definitely
allowing marijuana to be legal. How do you feel about that?
I think something has to happen. I'll give you an example. At Colorado, back during the gold rush, 1849, they were sitting on a pile of gold waiting for somebody to come give them the money for it and take it away. Well, it's different now. They're sitting on a pile of money waiting for somebody to tell them it's okay to put it in the bank, and they're all sitting on mountains of cash.
Cash or munchies?
Cash.
Okay.
You know, so they got to do something. And when they do it, what happens is the dispensary in Colorado, do they just get to go walk up to the bank with $20 million in cash and go, here's my deposit? Whoa.
Well, the problem is that because it's a federally regulated the banking industry.
So what do they do? All the money that they've made prior to the federal government getting involved, what happens to all that? It stays under the table? Like
they get a safe in the back room somewhere. Yeah, they get.
But what do you do with it, Kevin? You can't
you
do
reinvest.
anything. In what?
Who's
going to take cash?
Other industries.
Oh, I want to buy your industry. Here's $20 million in cash. It's laundering. It's like gray market laundering of money. You know what I mean? They have to do something. They have to. It's.
Well, we got less than 3 minutes left in the program. If there was anything that we haven't mentioned during this fantastic segment, what would you like to say to the folks who are watching this and who will be watching this repeatedly?
Still involved with South Shore Boxing Club over here. We got a lot of really great fighters down there.
Who are you going to put a plug in for? I feel it.
Mike Badman Ohan Jr.
Is he? What's his record right now?
He's up pro. He's 6-0, going for 7-0.
Okay.
But we got a lot of kids down there too. They're doing a great job. They have been. It used to be Cliff, then it was Mark DeLuca. Of course, he's having a bad time, so Cliff's in there again. But it's still right over here in the old Regal Shoe Factory. Okay. So, I have one finger in Whitman still.
Okay. So you're still active here in this community?
Yeah, my dad lives in Hanson. You know, I was there the other day cleaning up his down trees. So.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you, Kevin.
And talking about this particular issue, at least giving a counter to conversations that we have had. And I want to thank you for tuning in and utilizing what we have here for programs on Whitman Hills Community Access. If you'd like to be someone who gets involved with some of the programs that we have here, maybe you'd like to do your own show. info@whca.tv is the way, or stop on by 115 South Avenue here in Whitman. Well, that's all the time that we have. Until next time, have a good day.